I come from a corporate background. I left my job at InMobi. I worked there for 3-4 years, and I left it overnight to work in the slums across Bangalore. And I was actually, I grew up seeing a lot of abuse, and I felt that maybe, connecting with people who would have seen a lot of violence than I had would maybe help me, one, to feel better about myself, and secondly also if I could do something for them, right? So that's how I slowly also ventured into the social sector. Been working with organizations such as the Nudge Foundation and Kailas Satyarthi Children Foundation, and also the Syrian refugees. And I think yeah, that's I strongly believe in the power of connections, and that is one of the things that I have kind of observed and learned in last few years as well, that uh, this is, we are all after all humans, and we are somewhere looking for connect, and connection is something that is needed, and that can go a long way in shaping an individual. And that's how actually listening in also came into being.
Okay. So any sort of, what all thoughts, or can you share more about how did this listening in happen? What all thoughts were going on at that time?
Right. So, like I said, so there was this observation, right, that there are so many, not just from my own experience, but also that of from the experience of a lot of people who I met uh, in these years, was that, there are a lot of platforms that are asking you to talk, right? And there are also a lot of, you would find courses, clubs which are helping you to improve your speaking skills, right? You have Toastmasters, you have TEDx, you have so many other clubs, right? And when it and it's, what is happening is that everyone is talking and everyone wants to talk, and this is what is being encouraged. And on the other side, what is also happening is that, again, my observation and that of a lot of people has been that talking isn't helping, because no one is listening, right? When we talk about communication, it's a two-way process, right? It involves talking and listening as well. But unfortunately, the focus has always been on talking and the need to talk, right? Whereas on the listening is the one skill which has been undervalued and left under the assumption that we all know how to listen. And I think this gap is something which is constantly, it's been widening, and this gap in itself is leading to a lot of problems, because people are increasingly feeling unheard, be it in their personal relationships or even in their workplaces as well, right? We as, again, calling ourselves listeners, we are very quick to judge, we are very quick to offer advices, we are very quick to offer solutions or quick fixes, right? Or label someone. We know it all, we have this urge to respond, right? So and we don't know somehow that this is not what listening is, and we haven't been listening enough. And what, how it affects the other person is that then, the conversation becomes very superficial, because they feel that they haven't been understood or they haven't been heard. And I think that's the problem which we kind of observed. And the problem also isn't that people don't want to listen, it's that people don't know how to listen, because this is something that we haven't been taught even in our schools, right? Reading, writing, speaking is what they teach us, but we are told how to listen, not taught to listen. So that's the problem that we're trying to address by helping people to become better listeners.
Okay, so you say that people want to listen, but they don't know how to listen. But that is also the case with people want to talk. And now, but you are saying there are a lot of courses that are tackling that aspect, how to talk. But there have not been many courses, as you are saying. That's why probably you started listening in that, okay, now we want to talk about how to listen. So why do you think there have not been much content around this, or not been many courses around listening? If people really want to listen, because there is a content around how to talk.
Right. I think one of the reasons is this assumption, like I said, right, that there is nothing much to learn in listening. And often we tend to confuse hearing and listening. We think that just because we are hearing and we are listening, right? But listening goes much beyond the words that somebody is using. It's also listening for trying to understand, comprehending, listening for beyond the words, for the meaning and the feelings what somebody is talking about, right? So I think that could be one of the reasons. And also, even when you see, if a child also, when child starts talking, right, everyone appreciates, see, he started talking, अरे इतना अच्छा बात कर रहा है इसने आज ये बोला, right? So शुरू से ही talking is, or speaking is, some one skill that has been appreciated. Oh, this is what, you know, you're good at. Oh, people all, we also feel, oh, we need to improve and learn and all of that, right? You have these clubs where you have debate clubs, and presentation. In fact, if you look at the undergraduate schools, 78% of them give value to presenting skills, and only 11% of them give value to listening skills, right? Which is very unfortunate. But I think that's how it has been happening, and uh, listening is just left alone, just causing a lot of problems now.
Right, because I think presenting, as you're saying, is valued by a lot of people, because if you present, right, you gain a certain social status or you progress in your career. I'm not sure how many people progress in their career or gain social status by listening well. Is
Uh, I think they don't, but at the same time, if you look at the patterns which are emerging now, because people haven't been listening, the organizations, the corporates have been experiencing, like there's a Holmes report. Holmes is a PR agency which said that globally organizations, the corporates are losing $31 billion a year because of the communication gaps, and majority of that loss is because people are not listening. Now listening is also becoming as one of the most demanded skills, because like I said, there are not enough people who are listening, so it leads to like a miscommunication, loss of your time sending mails back and forth, in meetings are not being productive, right? And there is miscommunication, someone has said something but someone has done something else, right? So loss in revenue, so everything is kind of compounding. And again, the foundation remains that people are not listening enough and they don't know how to listen. So I think eventually this is being recognized, and probably that is also the skill that some organizations, yes, they say that they do look into the candidate being a good listener, but I'm sure this will be required on uh, for everyone in the near future. And it's good to see that now students who get trained with us also, they've started putting it listening skills on the CV. So I think that's an amazing.
okay, okay. So beyond what impact it could have on, let's say, our career or our social status, let's talk about the kind of impact it can have on our interpersonal relationships. Uh, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that just goes without saying, because uh, I mean, it's hard to identify any place where listening is not, right? And close to 85% of our day is spent communicating, right? And 40 to 45% of that is listening. And yet, less than 2% of us have been trained in any form of listening whatsoever, right? When it comes to interpersonal relationships, a lot of times what you'd see is that the reason for the conflicts is misunderstandings or miscommunication, right? If you take two couples also, somebody say, you are not listening to me, oh no, you are not listening, see, I told you this, you always do this, right? Both of them feel that they are not listening to each other, but actually nobody's listening to each other, it's just talking that is happening, right? Children are feeling the parents don't listen, right? Well, papa, you don't listen to me, and mom, you don't listen to it. Parents are frustrated, oh, children don't listen to us, right? So everywhere there is this gap. And I think listening, when if we listen, if we give that space to people who are our loved ones, hearing them out, trying to understand, from their perspective, no matter how well we think we know them, again, we think that we know them, we have known them for all life, mujhe iske bare mein sab kuch pata hai, but being open to listen to them, what they have to say, I think that can go a long way to strengthen the relationships, to feel the connect, to feel that, like, I would say compassion, right? And yeah, and I think overall improve the human experiences that you talk about.
Okay. So we think we are listening, but you are saying that we don't have the skills to listen. We have not been trained. So in a sense, we are not really listening. Is that what you're saying?
I won't say for all. See, there are a few people who inherently are good listeners, right? But this is one skill that can be learned and improved on. And there is no definition of that per se perfect listener, right? People who have been practicing listening for over the decades also, they are also still learning, and they still uh, uh, experience a lot of barriers and challenges when it comes to listening or getting distracted, and they are also working on a, like, on a daily basis consistently. So I think it's not that because we are not trained, that is why we're bad listeners. Like I said, there would be some people who have better listening skills than others, but this is something, but in majority of the cases that is a problem. Because see, if I haven't ever been listened properly, and that's how I have also been listening in that way, so I don't actually know what listening is. So the conditioning is so strong that I've always assumed that I know how to listen, but actually I'm not been listening. It's like saying that I know how to drive a car, that makes me a good driver. It doesn't work like that, right? Everyone who can drive a car is not a good driver. Just because having driving skills doesn't automatically mean you're a good driver. But this is the assumption that we live with. We can hear, so we are good listeners. Or I can fix a problem, I'm a good listener.
Okay. So it's about that we are not really good, majority of us, I'm talking about majority of us, we are not really good listeners.
Yes.
So, okay. So can you give me a few examples, for example, that actually shows how we are not listening?
How we are not listening. I
Because
think,
we think, right, that we are listening, of course.
yes.
And that's partly the reason that we are running trainings to tell us, okay, how to listen, because we are listening.
Right. So I think this is one major thing that we touch upon in the foundational training on day one, right? When we ask people to rate themselves and how good a listener you are, and majority of them tend to rate themselves above 7, above average listeners. I am a good listener because my friends come and talk to me, and that's why I'm a good listener. Second, I'm a good listener because so and so comes to me with their problems, and I can give them solutions, and the solutions work from them, so I'm a good listener, right? The moment you tell them through a role play what listening is not, and everyone says that, oh, we are not supposed to judge, we are not supposed to be biased, we are not supposed to give solutions, we are not supposed to fix problems, we're not supposed to interrupt and things like that. But what happens is that even if we do one role play, if we give them one such situation where they have to be showcase their listening skills, so they end up doing everything that they've said that they're not supposed to do, and it happens so subconsciously that they don't even realize that they have done everything, right? So I think uh, if we having a very strong urge to respond or forming an opinion about what somebody is saying before even letting the other person finish, right? Oh, mujhe pata hai ye conversation kahan jane wala hai, right? I'll just wait, haan tum bolo, right? So my listening is already shut down, right? Or I know that, oh, this person is very annoying, right? Or maybe from my past conversations, and I know this person is coming again to talk to me. I will go with that approach. Oh yeah, again he'll be say something, and it is going to affect me like this. and my listening is shut down no matter how much I'm using all those non-verbal cues, everything, right? Or if there is some, even in the workplace, somebody who we call them pakao, right? Like somebody who shares a lot of gyan or something which is very complex for us, right? Again, oh, past conversations have like this, like now maybe again he'll say something which I won't be able to understand. So we are already entering the conversation with a lot of assumptions based on the past experiences, based on the past conversations, based on what we know about the person or we don't know about the person, right? And a lot of times we are already entering into the conversation thinking that, oh, I have to identify the problem and then have to tell what is to be done with it, and that's it, right? So we are already entering a conversation with some agenda. So we are not being open to explore, listen with the person what this conversation is about. So I think that is one of the things that, again, we are not listening in a lot of these cases.
So you're saying people are aware of how they should listen, but in
Yes.
reality, they are not doing those things. So it's an application level problem. They have
Yes.
the knowledge,
Yes.
they're not applying it.
We know everything, right? It's more about, I think listening is more than learning. It's about unlearning, which has to be done because of the conditioning, like I mentioned.
So why are people not doing it if they already know what to do?
uh, because probably they're not willing to acknowledge that they are not listening, right? Because for us also to, like I said, to even I wouldn't say show a mirror, but it's like for to give them space to reflect on their listening behaviors. It really we have to spend a lot of effort to take them to that point where they introspect and reflect, oh, what I was doing, right? Because if I take 1 or 2 hours training and just give gyan on, oh, this is how you should listen, this is not how you should listen, and all of that. So a lot of them will feel, ha, aise to karte hain, hey, this is how we do it, right? So that is why there's no need to acknowledge that this is a problem or this is a gap which is there and I need to address it. That people don't reach to that point because there is no willingness to kind of even see that, is this something that we are missing or we're doing it wrong? That assumption is so strong. Sunne mein kya hai? It's not a big deal, right, to listen.
So you said that people don't listen because they one of the reasons is that they carry certain sort of ideas that, okay, this is where this conversation is going, okay, this is what this person is going to say and all that, right? But isn't that a natural thing, more efficient way to go about it? We already, right, have certain expectations, right? If we start listening to the whole thing every time the other person is saying, then wouldn't it take a lot of time?
See,
That could
that's,
be,
I think you answered it, that it takes a lot of time. Truly listening to someone
right,
takes a lot of time and it can be very draining.
right.
That is one of the reasons that we take a easier route, right? Point kya hai? Batao, ye bataya, done, right? But even if we look at the neuroscience perspective as well, right? Uh, a speaker, uh, I mean, we on an average, a person gets around 900 to 1600 thoughts a minute, right? So the chances for me as a speaker to say what I really mean to say is 11%. Why? Because the capacity that you have as a listener, you can listen to 400 words per minute on an average. That's a capacity, not that what you're listening. As a speaker, I can speak around 125 to 150 words a minute. You have the capacity to listen to 400, right? And at the same time, while you're listening, while I'm talking, the there's so many thoughts that are coming in my mind. So the chance that I will see what I really want to say, what I really mean, is just 11%, right? That's also what you were saying, that what happens is, I mean, some of your conversations with your students, they're talking about something else, but then they're talking about something else, they're talking about something else, right? Then you think, oh, there are actually so many thoughts here, right? Because there are so many thoughts that going on, but then maybe these three things were also what is not the problem. right? It could be something else. They still not got that space to explore. So that exploration in itself needs time. But what we think is that the first thing that comes out, oh, this is the thing, and that like close it, right? So that's what happens.
Right, but we all have limited time and we want to do a lot of things in life, right? So you are suggesting a very seems to be very inefficient way of going about things.
Yes, I think if that is what you want to call it, but maybe if we would want to also give it a thought to, uh, again, let's say if we have even 2 minutes for that matter, or even 5 minutes, right? So would you rather have a conversation which is very superficial, which you think that, oh, this is what it was about, and then close it? Or would you really want to have a conversation wherein you're trying to understand what the person wanted to say, right? And respond accordingly, right? So what is happening is most of us have been choosing the first thing, right? And it wasn't something probably you wanted to say, but because it was easier and again efficient in terms of time, like you're saying, right? So but that's also wasn't something that the real conversation which for what the speaker actually wanted to initiate at that. And at the same time, see, when I talk about it also depends on the context, right? So for example, if a salesman comes into your place to sell something, right, it's not that you will start exploring with him, right? And 1 hour you'll be exploring deeper with him, right? So there you have to use your critical listening skills as well, right, to evaluate what the product is, what is not. And same goes for meetings as well. A lot of times you have to use your critical listening skills as well. But at the same time, the foundation, being open and being non-judgmental and trying to give that space to the person, and a lot of tools that come in listening, that remains same more or less.
Right.
And one of the other reasons actually people don't listen, like you were saying, is one is the time constraint, and the other is also that we are already preoccupied with a lot of things, right? Our mind is also cluttered. So many stressors. जैसे आप कह रहे हो time नहीं है लोगों के, किसके पास इतना time है यार to listen? Like, oh, it's very exhausting. Like, we don't have the time. We have 100 other things going in our own lives, right? So who is going to put so much effort listening? So these are a lot of the constraints that are coming in way, because of which we are not listening the way we should.
Actually, the question that the last 3-4 questions that I asked from you are the question that I get uh, in the sessions when I talk about comprehension, reading skills, right? When I ask people to slow down, to read what the text is saying, and then they're like, "Sir, this is so slow. If I take such time, I'll take forever to complete the test, and I just have limited time." And I tell them, okay, your speed will improve over time, but how much time? I can't devote more than 2 months. I have to GMAT prep. I have other things to do in my life, right? So there is a rush to completing things and move on in life. But then I say, okay, but if you're rushing, then you're not really understanding things, or probably you're just understanding 50-60% of things, and your score will eventually reflect that. And I think to an extent, that could be the answer to all the question that I was asking, that, yeah, you can listen with whatever rush you're listening, but then you will listen probably, I'm not sure, 50-60 or whatever that percentage is, that you probably know better. But essentially that will eventually reflect in the quality of relationships and the quality of connection that you have with the other person, right? And I think we don't get to feel that when we are listening, because the other person is someone who wants to be heard. But when we are wanting to be heard, then it really matters to us that, okay, the person is actually rushing, is not really listening to me.
Right. I think you're absolutely right when you said, and there are a lot of parallels in what you teach about reading comprehension and comprehending, right? You have to really slow down. And honestly, it is very draining. And it actually, like, sometimes, I don't know, I start getting heading when I'm reading something. It requires so much attention, right? And that's how listening is. It can be very draining, but we take the easier route. But like you said rightly, that it can only take us to some extent,
Right.
right? So let's say if you talk in terms of maybe GMAT, maybe it can take you to 650, 700, but you can't go beyond that with that skill, that gap.
Yeah.
Right. So that is when it comes to connections also, you can go to a certain extent, but you won't be able to make that connect, or you won't be able to understand that where that person is coming from. So
Right.
that's what it is, right?
Yeah, I think that is one of the reasons people are not right. Right. I think we have had this discussion, and I think you also agree. It's extremely crucial. Listening is extremely crucial to human connection, right? If I don't listen to the other person, how will that connection form? A lot of people are now going to experts to right to be heard, and I see that very often that they just can't talk to their parents, they can't talk to their spouses, so they are rushing to the experts. कोई तो सुन लो मेरी बात, right? What I want to say. Uh, uh, and I think one of the reasons people are still not paying attention is there is no GMAT score. You're not getting that score. Okay, you score a 250 on listening. And then like,
Right.
no,
I
I
think
don't want that.
maybe propose to the GMAT guys to include listenings or listening skills also.
Not be GMAT, maybe some other organization, but right, we are paying attention only to those things which we can show off. Right now we can't really show off the kind of depth of connections we have in our lives, right? So we're not paying attention to those aspects. It's like, okay, I have a wife, I have a beautiful wife and all that, but what is the kind of relationship you have? What is the depth, right? That is not there. So somebody should start giving a score on that aspect also, so that people no, I don't want to be at 250. I deserve a better score. So I think then people will start taking such courses.
Right. I think, like you said, it is difficult to show, right? Because this is something that connection can only be experienced, right?
Right.
And to be able to reach that experience, also you have to go to that level where you are actually trying to understand, and you can trying to make the person feel heard, or for person also feels heard. And when we also ask people this question in the trainings, that maybe try to think of an incident or a situation where you really felt listened to, right?
Right.
Or you felt that you were not listened to, right?
Right.
And how did you feel in both of these situations? And what is very unfortunate is that a lot of times people don't know how it feels to be heard or how it feels to be listened to. They have not experienced it. And sometimes people get overwhelmed that, oh, I don't remember last time when I was actually listened to, or what it feels like. क्योंकि हमें तो हमेशा यही बोला गया है कि हाँ ठीक है ना, ठीक है, सब ठीक है, या chill करो, या ये करो, वो करो, kind of, right? So people have always been shut down, and they never gotten to voice out what is actually going on. So that experience is something which people haven't had, and then everyone wants to be heard, but no one wants to listen. But to be heard, first you need to also listen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think it in terms of more of a gift that you can give to your loved ones, right? You cannot be sure that you would get that in return, but at least something that you can give to others if this is something that you really value.
It listening is like but so much, I mean, the power that good listening has, right? It can actually create a ripple effect, right? It can be very contagious to in your relationships, in your workplace. And that also happens a lot of times, right? A lot of us have a favorite teacher in school. ये मैम के पास जाना, ये समझेगी, right? And not going on the listening skills also, but the kind of comfort that person gives, or maybe they're trying to be there and trying to understand. So then you'll be able to find that uh, experience that difference, talking to X versus talking to Y, who's a better listener, right?
Mm.
So that is something people can start observing, and even in their relationships, when you, like you said.
Right. So you mentioned that you ask people to share their experiences when they feel heard and when they feel not heard. Uh, would you like to share a few anecdotes that? Um,
uh, I think people I won't be mentioning like the specific instances, but at the same time, uh, maybe I would want to focus on the impact that conversation has created on people, because people tend to share instances from their childhood also. They
Yeah.
also tend to remember, this is where I was, sitting, and this happened. The incident, that feeling is so, I would say, it's registered so well in their mind, because when they feel heard, it's so rare as well, that they vividly remember everything about it, right? Till date. And this has happened not when I'm talking about people even who are in the 50s 60s, also able to think of the college instances, right? But there are very few instances, that's why maybe they remember it so well. One or two instances here and there, so able to recall it very well. When it comes to unheard, then people are like, oh, there's so many, which one do I say first, right? And then they have recently I was having a conversation with my friend only, and this is what happened, I want to talk about this, but she felt either was she was too busy, or people felt unheard at the workplace also. There was this person who said, it wasn't my fault whatever happened in that project, but I was called and I was humiliated in the workplace, and I tried to give my perspective, and this is what has happened and this is what it is, but nobody listened to me. And he said, now also when I think of it I just feel shaken up by this entire experience. I don't see myself going through, I see myself going through it once again, right? So even those feelings, those specific instances, also people have in their like very vividly, I mean very clear in their minds. But yeah, I think there are so many, I won't say there is one. uh, and people have also said that, what, I have always, and again using extreme words, like always felt not listened to. So I want to be that person who listens to others, because I don't want others to go through what I went through. So that has also become a reason for a lot of people to be a better listener. And the kind of, when you use the statements like always this has happened, right? So this also shows that this has happened so many times that people have also lost hope कि next वाले से भी ऐसा ही होगा, right? So they are not expecting it anymore as well.
So, what are the common ways in which sort of we falter at listening, or common ways we go wrong in terms of listening?
Uh, it depends on our own listening habits, our own listening behaviors and patterns as well, right? Uh, because, like I said, some people uh, would have an urge to respond before someone else's finishes, right? Some people have very strong assumptions and judgments based on what society or what the parents or what people around them have taught them, right? So for example, in terms of religion, right, you would have seen how much conflicts are happening these days, right? So beliefs are so strong and so ingrained in their mind that they are, it's very difficult for them to even listen to what the other, I mean, when I say listen, actually it's very difficult to hear also, right? In that case. So or I think multitasking, social media, एक हाथ में phone है, हाँ हाँ मैं सुन रही हूँ ना, बोलो बोलो, yeah I'm listening, see you're saying this, right? So actually what people don't realize is that you're listening or you're not, there's nothing in between, right? So actually not listening. Or uh, there are some preconceived notions, or again trying to go into that I can fix this approach. Just because someone has come to talk to us, we tend to think that he's looking for a closure or is in a problem, then I have to help him. And then we also need to define that help, that isko ye karna chahiye, right? What we also don't realize is that a lot of times when you truly listen to the person, they themselves can get more clarity in their own mind, and people a lot of times know what they have to do, right? So that also happens, we don't do that, so that is where we falter. um not giving enough time also, like we discussed earlier, making it quick. um yes, I think these would be some of the things that people do face. And yes, another challenge, which is one of the biggest challenges at foundational level, is getting distracted, right? We don't even getting distracted doesn't mean that just being distracted by external factors, but our internal distractions, right? पता ही नहीं होता है बात कर रहे हैं using all the non-verbal gestures that any book teaches us on listening, but mind is somewhere else already, right? Oh, मुझे ये करना है या what is she wearing, yeah, what is she क्या बोल रही है, so I'm already thinking about something else, but I'm not even aware of that,
Right.
right? So, and it is very difficult to control distractions. I mean, there is no way we can completely avoid distractions. I mean, not actually, there's no way that we can't be distracted, but it's just that, again, there have to be some certain strategies that people have on their own to bring themselves back to the conversation.
Right. Right. So is there a does there exist a definition of listening according to you, that okay, this person has listened to something, or
I think
what does it take, or what are the sort of characteristics, or you say okay, these are the things that need to be satisfied for listening to happen?
Unfortunately, there is no one definition of listening.
Okay.
And in fact, even if we look at the research, even the listening scholars, people who have been doing research on listening for over the years, they don't also agree to one definition of listening, right?
Okay.
But certain things which definitely need to be fulfilled in having a good conversation, where the listening is also happening, is wherein you are entering into a conversation without an agenda, being open to what the other person has to say, listening with them, right? Not to them, listening with them where they are taking. You are not supposed to lead the conversation. It is for them to lead the conversation. Trying to understand from their perspective, right? Not going into your own experiences and shifting focus back to yourself, right? It should be about them. Then trying to be non-judgmental, unbiased, easier said than done. Now, if I'm saying it, like a lot of people maybe who are seeing it will think, I don't judge. Yeah, I don't have a bias. But we do that. We don't even realize that. So, yeah, I think these would be certain things. Being open to what somebody has to say and understanding the need, trying to understand the need of the person. What is this person looking for from this conversation? We don't focus on the needs. We think what, based on our perspective, what should be done in this context.
I think
There's
when a
a
person is sort of very readily offering a solution, he's trying to see that, yeah, the other person is looking for a solution. So he's just jumping to that. What could be other reasons why a person is it's a talking if he's not even looking for a solution? Because that's an assumption, right?
yes,
That's a thought
yes,
process that's going on. Okay, he's coming to me looking for a solution. This is me given a solution right away, right? Why waste 15 minutes talking about it?
right. I think like you'd mentioned earlier, it's sometimes people just want to. They've never got that space to share what has been going on with them, and that is what they're looking for. I won't just call it a vent out. Yes, some people do want it, but at the same time, listening also entails asking the right kind of questions and exploring with them, right? So sometimes even, and there could be cases where somebody says that I don't know what to do, right? So probably they are expecting a solution, but a lot of times they know what is to be done, and people eventually do what they want to do, right? But as a listener, my role is to kind of help explore that with somebody, right, with the speaker, and help them reflect and gain more clarity in terms of, even if they're looking for solution in that case. And I think listening also entails a lot of humility, that as a listener I may not have all the answers, right? And it is for me to acknowledge that it's okay, maybe I won't have all the answers, and maybe I can explore the options with the person. What do you think could you do here, right? What do you think could your options are? Would you want to give that a thought? Then you are offering the person the space to reflect and see, okay, this maybe I've tried this is not working, or this I should do, and all of that you can explore with them accordingly.
Hmm. So you are saying, so one is that a person could be coming to you to sort of get a solution for the problem that the person is facing, or it could be that you are saying the person could be just coming to just share or just get listened to. That is a,
Most of the time that's the case.
Okay. Okay.
right? Because like I said, if you truly listen to a person the way, I mean, listening should happen. So in that case, you would also see that people themselves say towards the end that, oh ha, mujhe na shayad ye karna chahiye, this is what I should have done, or this is I should not have done, or, and because of this reason and all of that, right? So that's people know most of the times, even if they're saying that they're actually looking for a solution, they know what to do.
They're just coming to get listened to.
Yes,
That is the need they are trying to
I think
meet.
when I say listen to, it's also somebody who accepts what they have to say without questioning them, right? When I say they're not questioned for what they are feeling, how they are feeling, or what they have to say, their truth is their truth. And somebody who sees that their reality as their truth and listens with them, not trying to correct, not trying to rationalize. A lot of times we do that, right? Something which is very trivial, yeah, बहुत हमें लगेगा, yeah, this is so silly, right? Or this person is being so illogical, so irrational, right? So then I would also try to maybe show him a different perspective on trying to show him logic or where he is missing logic. See, tum illogical ho rahe ho, right? So, but accepting the truth as that, how no matter how much irrational you think it is, as a listener, it should not be for me to make sense of what the other person is saying.
Right.
It should be for me to help the other person make sense of what they're saying.
Right. So I can understand that, yeah, that if I'm evaluating whether that is silly or that makes sense, then I'm essentially evaluating or judging whatever that person. I'm not really listening. But you are saying my job is to help that person make sense of what he's saying. What does that mean?
So, like taking the same example that you said, something may not make any sense for me, right? Something somebody said. Let's say I say that I think, Shah Rukh Khan is going to kill me. Senseless. Kya baat kar rahe, right? Like, just, this is very irrational. What are you talking about? It's a very extreme example, but just something which doesn't make sense, right? Now, it is not for me to make sense of this thing, right? As a listener, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't add up to me because of maybe my conditioning or my understanding or my perspective, whatever. But is it about my perspective or my understanding, or is it about this person? What this person has said is their truth. So, but exploring with them, what do they feel about it, or what going exploring with them by asking the right kind of questions for them to make sense of what they mean to say, helping them get more clarity on that by asking the right kind of question, by offering that connect, by offering that acceptance and exploring with them. Only then people share what they're actually feeling about things as well, and this conversation won't be superficial.
Hmm. Yeah, I can sense how difficult it would be for me to listen if somebody says Shah Rukh Khan wants to kill me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. पहले ही वो आ जाता है ना, अरे यार click click I नहीं, वहां पे ही that barrier comes in, right? And then we think again, we might sometimes we might approach, oh okay, let me see what he wants to talk, right? But then the way we'll be listening, acha, so see, Shah Rukh Khan is in Bombay, right? So you're in Delhi. So how do you think that can happen? But I'm actually slowly also nudging him to think that you're being irrational and this is how you should think instead.
right.
But is it for me to nudge him like that and lead him in the conversation? Or is it for me still to be open and help him make sense of what he's saying rather than if it's making sense to me or not? That's very difficult.
Right. Yeah. And I think that also brings us to that aspect that, yeah, this is like, right? Because it is going to take a lot of time, especially in the beginning, to be able to sort of hold your propensities back to jump into the thing, disapproving or sort of, right, correcting the other person and just listen to the other person. Yeah, I think but yeah, I think when we were talking, that when you were saying that, okay, there are situations when something is extremely important for the other person that may not be important for you. I remember one incident in which my student sent me a text that, okay, can we talk right now? It was some 9:30 p.m. I was like, now what is so urgent about it? So I thought maybe something is urgent. So I picked up the called him, and then he started talking about something that I thought, wow, this is what he wanted to talk about at 9 p.m. with me. But then as he continued, uh, I could understand that uh, that whatever that thing was, he was taking it to mean much more than what I thought that should mean. Basically, let's say if I don't remember the exact context. Let's say he was not able to solve the question X. I was then okay, so what? That's fine, right? What's the big deal? But he was taking that to mean that he's a failure and he's not good for anything, right? So that's why immediately he thought, oh, he felt a flood of emotions and then he wanted to talk to somebody. But I could not get that, but by just looking at the context, okay, he could not solve question X, right? I had to just listen to him to really understand, oh, he's making that huge jump, right? It's a huge jump for me, right? It's still a judgment from my side, and I'm saying it's a huge jump.
Right.
But yeah, different people can understand different things in very different ways. Yeah, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. It becomes very difficult to understand that itna sa cheez jo for me, but the question is that is it for me to decide how much value that thing is it for me to decide the value of the thing, right? Somebody may be upset, very upset, because of whatever pencil, right, for that matter. But then for us it will be like, pencil, like, are you serious? Like, you're upset because of this, like, go buy another one, right? It doesn't work like that. But that it is very difficult to not do that and still be open and realize that this is my bias coming in, and how I'm being more aware of it, and don't let it come in the way of your conversation. It's like a muscle, right? We go to gym, initially बहुत painful होता है, right? Cramps होता है, everything, but
Right.
then eventually we have to be consistent, like you say. I think in your course as well, reading comprehension also, and we have to be consistent and constantly improve, and that is the only way to learn and grow. Make a conscious effort, being aware. So
Right. Okay. So before we close, so what are the ways in which we can become better listeners? Of course, one way is by taking the courses that you are offering, which I'm planning to take. But what are the other ways in which we can become better listeners?
think first would be to start listening to your own self. When I say start listening to your own self, it is you'll be able to also identify your own judgments, your biases, being more observant of the conversations you are having or have had in the past. And I think the easiest thing nowadays would be to, if you are entering into a conversation, make sure that you have your device in switch it off, or don't have it around you. Don't multitask. Try to give your whatever the maximum amount of attention you can give in a conversation, right? Be mindful of your distracting thoughts. You cannot undo them, but you should have a way to park them and return to them later, right? But being mindful of this is what is happening. Being very honest also. Let's say if something, I am distracted because of something, or if I have something other thing urgent which is, but how do you communicate to the other person, right? And so that they are also not offended, but at the same time I'm not disrespecting them, but I'm also listening to them when I'm also in that better space, or I have that time, or whatever that constraint is, rather than just pretending to be here just because of the sake of the conversation, right? And also I would say investing to your time and effort to become a better listener. Go explore the online resources and maybe read some books, if and maybe also get trained if again people think that that's going to help.
Great. Great talking to you, Jaskiran.
Thank you so much, sir. I think.
You want to cover, say
Sorry, hello.
anything else you want to cover, or
Uh, Yeah, I think, yes, I would also want to know about, so you have been, like, I follow you on LinkedIn, right? We are connected. So I've been seeing your posts around, you're trying to, I think one thing that I have personally found about you as a teacher or as a coach is also that, uh, one, you're very approachable, right? And second, I think the kind of, it's not just uh, a coach or a student relationship, but you also kind of offer that connect, right, to your students or people who know you, right? So I've been seeing that you have been posting about giving your students the space to connect and offering them a listening ear, right? Be it for any not, disturbing thoughts they are having during preparation or otherwise as well. So just want to know, how's your experience been? Try to be there for your students or offering them the space to connect.
So
Are
yeah,
you seeing any impact of that?
I think it was about around 21st December. I think I wrote a LinkedIn post saying that, yeah, people can approach me, sharing any emotional issues that they are facing that are taking a toll on their health, um, mainly mental health. So my reason for, and that was not really limited to the students, anybody could approach me, of course, but a lot of people who approached me were my students, but there were other non-students also. And my reason for offering that space to people was simply that I've been, I think in the last 2 years especially, I've been, uh, when I when I take sessions, I've been listening to students, and now there is a lot of, I see a lot of people facing a lot of, if I say, mental health issues in terms of anxiety, stress, panic attacks. A lot of things are happening in people's lives because of GMAT and because of many other things, also career related, personal relationships, and other things. Um, and I think, at least in some of the conversations that I've had with my students, I could see that uh, whatever I shared with them seemed to help them to an extent, in terms of looking at whatever situation that they are facing in a different way that was more helpful than the way that they were looking at initially. Uh, this is something that I was talking about, that, right, that our experience of a situation is not really a direct consequence of the situation. That is what a lot of people think. That's why they are bent on just changing the situation. They think that, okay, if I do an MBA, I'll be happy, and if I change this person, I'll be happy, and all that, because they think that whatever experience they are having is a direct consequence of the situation that they are facing. But what I have understood is that our experience is a function of our perspective towards the situation that we are facing. So there is an intermediate thing, that the perspective, that how we are looking at the situation. If we change it, how we are looking at the situation may remain the same, but experience will change significantly. And if our experience changes, our ability to handle or to respond to that situation also changes significantly. And somehow that, of course, for my own life also, I've been studying and thinking about these things for quite some time. So when I shared these things with some of my students, it seemed to help them. So I thought, okay, it was like almost the end of the year. So let me just offer it to others also. They can probably, I can help them in some way. If not anything, they can just open up about their concerns. At least they'll have somebody to, they can just talk to in a free manner. So I just opened it up, and I ended up receiving 15 emails on that, and it was really a very, very different experience, listening to the kind of different emotions that people are going through because of the various situations that they find themselves in, and right, and the way they are looking at those situations. So, so my intent was just to one is to give them sort of give them somebody who are just listening, who's just listening to them. Uh, um, and secondly, if I could offer them a different way of looking at the same situation, so that one, their experience may change. Secondly, their ability to respond may change. For example, like the example that we were talking about, the student gets X question wrong, and then he's thinking, oh, he's a failure and all that, right? If that is how you're experiencing that, getting that question wrong, then naturally your ability to respond is greatly diminished because you're feeling helpless. You're calling yourself a failure. On the other hand, if you think about it in a different way, if you look at getting a question X wrong, means okay, this is what I'm not clear about. I've improved in 10 other areas. There are 100 other things that I'm doing well. This is one thing that I'm not doing well. It need not define my entire experience of life, right? If you just look at it and put it into a perspective, then of course your experience changes, and then your ability to respond also changes. Now you can respond to it in a much more productive, much more helpful way. So yeah, I think that was the intent, and hopefully given the replies that I got, probably some of them did get benefit out of it, and it was also a very great experience for me to, right, because when you listen to people share really the deepest emotions that they are facing, that they are going through, you also form that human connection, right? Which, right, in itself is fulfilling, right? You don't need any other thing to get the fulfillment. Just the thing in itself brings you that experience, which feels like a fulfillment, right? So I don't need to solve the problem, or I don't need to get any other thing. That itself, listening to them itself was having that kind of connection with a stranger or with a student in itself was fulfilling. So yeah, and I was sharing that, right, we were talking that one of the reasons I think I can listen for long periods of time without interrupting is simply that I'm aware of my ignorance to an extent. I know that there are a lot of things that I don't know. So I don't form assumptions easily. Okay, yeah, this is where this person is headed. I don't know. So I can just listen. A lot of people don't listen because they think that they know where the person is going. So before that person goes there, they just reach there, right? And without giving that person an opportunity to go to some other place. So this is what I've observed, that there are a lot of destinations people have. I can't predict where they're headed to just by seeing their first few steps.
Right.
So I think it's just about being aware of my ignorance that has helped me to some extent to be a better listener. Of course, my family members may have a different opinion, but
Well, thank you for doing that, sir. Thank you for trying to be there for your students and people around you in a much more meaningful way and offering them that connect. And I think, like you said, the ignorance also being one reason, and trying to, learn about the person, you like, listening to learn more, like you say, in every question, learn as much as you can from one question, extract as much information you can, as much learnings you can, right, from one question. I think the same for extract as much learnings you can from one person while you're listening to them, and trying to learn something new from that conversation. That approach also kind of does help to uh, keep your assumptions aside, uh, and being open to the conversation. Thank you for sharing that, sir, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and thank you so much for doing this video, and I'm really impressed by the work that you're doing. I'm really inspired by it. I really hope that you really grow big and help a lot of people, because I see that I think a lot of people will get benefited by it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And always been a pleasure knowing you. And I think it love to learn more from you in every aspect as well. Thank you so much. And I love reading your posts, and I think so does everyone. There's so much to learn from each and every post, and the sharing, being like so vulnerable and sharing your experiences in the real form, in the raw form, right? I think that in itself builds a very strong connect with the audience. Thank you for doing that.
Chalo, cool. Okay, then, Jaskiran, thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much, sir. Take care. Bye.